Women on a Green Mission. Follow along as two friends document their unfurling permaculture journeys.
Join our chats each week where we'll be sharing how we and others apply permaculture to our gardens and daily life.
We're no experts. We're at the start of our journey, fumbling our way to a greener life. We love your company along the way.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another week of the podcast. This week we're joined by Gina. Hello.
Hi, how you going?
Good. And Joe's here with us too.
Hello.
Before we get too far into the podcast, we just want to acknowledge where we're recording. So whereabouts are you, Gina?
I'm on Yagle country.
You're on a boat on Yagle country.
Oh, well, I'm on a boat.
You're on Yagle water.
Yeah. I'm on the Clarence River in Yamba.
Lovely. And you, Joe?
So I'm recording from home, so I'm on the lands of the Wanneroo people.
And I'm just down the road from Gina, so I'm on Yagle country too. Lovely. So how about we start by you just telling us a bit about yourself and about Chaffin Creek Farm and what you guys do there?
Yeah, so we have been regenerative farming for about 5 years now. Sort of came from a need for food security and the inability to be able to get local food in our area, and a real desire to be sovereign and independent, and how tricky that becomes if you don't have land and you don't grow your own food. So we've done a lot of things at Chaffin. We still currently run cattle, so we don't have a big herd. We've only got about 60 cattle we breed. And we used to do chickens. So we had 900 chickens, and we stopped doing that probably about a year ago. Just farming's tricky. It's every day. The cost of everything came up. We couldn't get into the markets, couldn't sell retail. So we stopped doing that. And to be honest, that's a really great decision for us in our personal life. We struggled to, we've got too much stuff going on. We didn't have the focus that we really needed. The reason that we started doing that was because Rob had a cafe and couldn't get local eggs. So a local egg farmer was selling up and he bought in, and then he realised it was a lot of work and maybe he needed to start selling eggs as well. Rob's my partner. And, so it all just went from there. We've put in about 15 syntropic grows, so syntropic agroforestry, which is a system that mimics nature. It has a mixture of fruit trees, herbs, vegetables, natives, all in the same system. It's a system that grows quite close together. So that's all about improving the soil health, getting some good biodiversity in there, water management, all that sort of stuff. And we run workshops. So that's really where we're focusing in at the moment, is the workshops. We've really hit a bit of a niche with people, especially after COVID, really realising that things were a bit of a house of cards and more fragile than maybe what they would have thought before. So we've got quite a lot of interest in learning about regenerative agriculture. So we run biodynamic workshops, syntropic agroforestry workshops. We've got Peter Andrews' son, coming to run a workshop next year. So that's natural sequence farming.
Cool.
And if you're in the space, you know that's very exciting and a bit of a superstar sort of workshop.
That's awesome.
We're very excited about that. Yeah, we're really stoked about that. So,
but rewind for a second. How crazy is it that we're in the Northern Rivers, like prime growing space, and we can't access local produce?
No food.
Isn't
You
that
could
insane?
get beef and sugar is what we grow, commodities. And we just went to Japan not that long ago, and all the beef was all from Canada and Australia. Like the export,
So it's just all exported.
Yeah, it's hard to get out. Yep.
That's
It's
crazy.
It's crazy. It's so hard to access local food.
Yeah, and even just like north of us, like Kyogle and that whole area, and north of us in the Northern Rivers, there's so much growing going on, and still we can't access it. Like there's something broken in that system, in that chain, that, you know, people can't access local food. It just blows my mind.
And the inability to grow it. I was speaking to an 87-year-old the other day, and we were talking about how people that are younger than her really don't know a lot about growing food. It's like we lost the skill and we need to relearn it.
Yeah. Reading Retro Suburbia and even just some articles floating around the internet that, you know, within a generation or even 2 generations, how we've lost that skill. You know, I've come from all of my grandparents immigrated here and they all had gardens. You know, some of them still do, where they're growing their own veg, compared to my parents' generation and now this generation. I think we are seeing a resurgence of it, but just how much we've lost that skill to be able to understand how food grows, what it looks like, you know, how important soil health is. We're just so removed from that, and we've really lost that skill. And another conversation I was having about, you know, that intergenerational living or intergenerational coming together in community, even, because that I think is a massive part of that chain. Just not having those the elders and, you know, women coming together, and, you know, a lot of the time it's mums groups, so we're all in that same, you know, stage of life. We don't have, you know, the crones that come in and provide guidance and talk to us about childbirth, or, you know, talk to us about growing food. And there's no passing down of that. Not no, but I think there's a real lack of passing down of that wisdom to the next generation, and seeking out those things from people that are older than us, and how we get back to that, because we've just lost it. And I think it's something that's really going to be our downfall.
I think the system, though,
Across the
too, is
board.
designed to, like, the system's designed to stymie that, really, you know, to stifle it, because, you know, in years gone by, there was a need, like our, you know, our grandparents and our great grandparents, there was a need for them to grow food. There was a need to them to learn things, to be self-sufficient, to turn their hand at something and say, well, I have to learn how to do this because no one else is going to do it for me. I can't just go down the road and buy it, or I can't just ask someone else for it necessarily. I have to be able to do this for myself. So there was a necessity there. And I think that the system has taken that necessity away, which, you know, in some aspects is good, because we do have, you know, that convenience and those sorts of things. However, because we've got that, we also don't have the need, and therefore we don't have the drive to do these things. And I don't want to say like that's. That's right. That's right. And well, it's I say, yeah, in air quotes, it's abundance. It's not necessarily, as you're talking about, good, healthy, organic, nutritious food. There's food in mass, but yeah, the actual underlying nutrition and the value of that food's not necessarily there.
Which comes back to that soil health and the ability to be, like, that extraction sort of ideology that comes with an industrialized society. We just keep taking rather than putting back in and replenishing. So that nutritional health, and then of course, because nothing's local, it's coming from such far distance, which means that it's losing its nutrition along the way. We're using chemical agriculture. It's all that industrialized system that,
and that becomes the new normal, and then people expect that this is how it is, and I should be able to go down to the shop and buy this, and I should be able to, like, I deserve this. It's that level of entitlement, and I mean, I've been guilty of it as well. We all have, but we get so used to it. So the system is designed for us to do that, and then when we have to do something for ourselves, that seems like such a huge effort. I mean, I've got, you know, people that I talk to and I say, oh, you know, we grow, you know, a bit of our own food and we do this. We've got chickens and ducks, turkeys, blah, 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 blah. And they go, oh, that's so much work. Like, when do you have downtime? And I'm like, that is my downtime. Like, that is my mental health space when I'm out there doing those things. Like, I don't want to just, you know, sit around and talk about the woes of the world. Like, I want to be out there doing something that's going to enrich me. And they just see it as such a big impasse on their time. Like, oh, I'd rather just go to the shop and buy what I need. And I'm like, well, I'd rather not. Like, I'd rather grow it. Yeah, that's right. They have no idea.
Yeah, well, I don't think they realise they've got no idea what they're eating. They don't know what they're buying. They don't understand the food system and what they're actually putting in their body and how toxic that is. I think if people really understood the food system as it is, they might be more motivated to grow their own food. It's a disaster.
What led you down that path, Gina, and discovering that for yourselves?
There was no food.
Yeah.
There was no food. And then I used to run the Yamba farmers markets, and I was, you know, quite connected with people on the land and realizing how little there was, how regular it was for people to use things like glyphosate and think that it was a biodegradable product and it was all fine. Just not being able to trust where my food comes from and understanding the impact of nutrition on health. And again, that sovereignty, like I don't want to be dependent. I don't want to have be in. I don't. What would you do for food if you didn't have it?
Yeah, it's terrifying. And like there's only 3 days worth of
Right.
food chain supply anyway, if you're relying on the shops. So even if you think that's a reliable food source, and you're happy to go down that path, it really isn't 3 days between the shelves being full and empty.
So I suppose, Gina, I wanted to ask, sort of going down that biodynamic. So, you obviously you couldn't find good local, nutritious, organic food. So you went, okay, you know what, we're going to just do this ourselves. We're going to start this process. And then how did that sort of morph into going down the path of biodynamics?
A friend was into it, somebody that was willing, able, excited to share knowledge. And so we just started doing it. We started with maybe 15 people. And it's really wonderful. Tony Brown is his name, and he lives up at Wardell. He wasn't an educator when we started this, whereas now he's an educator. So it's a really amazing space at Chaffin Creek where we can bring people into the fold that have got knowledge that might not have been an educator before and really develop those skills and share that knowledge. And it's interesting the change in the people that have been coming to the workshops. We ran our first one, I think it was before the floods. It must have just been after COVID, and people were in panic that like we had this drove of people that came that were just freaking out. And it's really interesting. Those people have moved on, they've gotten jobs, they haven't necessarily come back. They were just operating in fear, so didn't go the long haul. Whereas now we had 70 people at our last syntropic agroforestry workshop.
Wow.
I know, it was crazy. It was super cool. I had to cap the numbers, and we could have easily done more. We're going to do 100 for our next one because we've worked out how we can accommodate for that many people. But it's just a different type of person. It's more everyday people that weren't really interested before, that have got land, that even people that don't have land, but it's more, I don't want to say mainstream because they're certainly not mainstream people that are coming, but more so than that real freaking out, conspiracy sort of driven, fear-based people. They're much nicer workshops now because everybody, we've got the singing bowls out and everyone's in tune, and it's just a really lovely day. And a lot of people come just because it's a really lovely connected community day, and we don't have that a lot in our communities anymore. It's outside, it's with nature. They bring their kids, it's a good day. So biodynamics is because of Tony Brown and his passion. I really knew nothing about it before then. He comes along with Hamish Mackay, who teaches with Charlie Arnott. So Hamish is incredibly generous, and they both would just always come for free. We really wouldn't make any money. It would cost us all to do it in the beginning. Hamish travels all over Australia in the real passionate dedication to education around biodynamics. His company is called Biodynamics 2024. And so the reason it's 2024 is because I think his goal was to have 70% of people growing biodynamically by 2024. And he's quite an older man, and whether I even call him a man, he's more of a spirit reincarnate. He's a very special person. So yeah, we just all connected and really wanted to share knowledge and be together, I guess, which is a really great place to start with anything that you want to make successful.
And so for those who don't know a lot about biodynamics, can you kind of go into what it is a little bit?
Well, I mean, I'm still learning. When you really look into it, it's quite a lot of stuff that people might see as woo-woo, but there's a real practical side of it that works. So a lot of the grape growers will use biodynamics just because grapes is it's not a commodity, it's based on taste. So, they're really trying to improve their soil and really trying to get that taste aspect to their grapes. So there's a lot of farmers that will use it just because it works and they don't worry about the rest of it. It's Rudolf Steiner was a guy back in the day who had a lot of ideas about a lot of things, not just growing food. It's really quite extensive. He's
education.
He's really about societal management, how we manage ourselves. So we basically just use the preps. Hamish is a lot more into that occultic side of it, but it's a lot around planetary movements, moon movements. But where we really fall into it is making those preps, making the cow pat pits, composting with biodynamics, and using that really practical side. That works for us. As I learn more, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I'm using stuff that works. It brings people together. It's a lot around energy. So there's a real beauty in a group of people coming together and implementing these practices. So one that probably people have heard of most is the Biodynamic Prep 500, which is the cow horns, burying the cow horns. So burying them over winter and putting clay and silica in the top of the cow horn to seal it so that all the worms and everybody else doesn't come in and eat all the deliciousness. And then pulling it out and making a soil activator. There's a lot around, the water velocity and spinning the water in the bucket. You might have seen that, and then back the other way. So you're creating flow and then chaos and then flow again. Just a interesting little segue on the reason that they've all got numbers as names is because during the war, the industrial World War II, like the industrial nature of that war, didn't like that there was a natural way of farming. There was a real surge in chemical agriculture, or the Green Revolution sort of beginning of that. And so they used to smuggle it. So the reason that it's got the numbers is so that they could smuggle the biodynamic preps. So, we'll do a cow pat pit, which is a pit in the ground with a enclosure. We use brick, and you put cow poo, a variety of other things in there, the biodynamic preps, and
Yeah, I think a lot of people get scared off biodynamics sometimes because they do think it's a very woo-woo kind of practice. But I think, like with anything, you take what you want and what you think works and leave the rest. But also, like you said, once you kind of get more into things, you can see maybe the reasoning behind it, or, you dip your toe in and you realize, oh, that's actually worthwhile. And you can definitely open your mind to different things once you start, just trying it.
And
because really, what's the harm?
And I'm not there to judge it. Like our vision is to have a demonstration and education space where people can come and teach regenerative practices. So if it's regenerative, so we're permaculture, biodynamics, syntropics, people can get a bit cult-like.
Yeah,
right, like
absolutely,
and we've
totally.
got to say, and it's just crazy.
It has to be like this, and if you don't do it like that, you're not in the club, you can't do it. Yeah,
I just throw all that out the window. I've got no interest in any of that. It's about sharing knowledge and being together and creating a regenerative practice in agriculture, but then also within ourselves, right? Like those principles span across life, not just in growing food. And if we look at humanity as a whole over, our existence, growing food is a fundamental part of our existence, or gathering food or eating is kind of fundamental to being human. So, I'm not really interested in all that political stuff.
And and fundamental to being in community and in relation.
That's
That's
right.
trading, going back, trading and swapping and bartering, and the exchange of food is just such a core of what a community is. So yeah, I think it's really important.
And this is what's so beautiful about these days. People come together, and it's not just about growing food. It's this deep spiritual connection that people just light up. It's a real heart space. It's wonderful. I don't even have the words to really describe what happens, because it's magic.
It reminds me of what Jo said our last episode. She said, I realized that, she's like, I thought I wasn't a people person and I didn't like people. She's like, but I was just with the wrong kind of people. That was my problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that came out of, we did a potluck dinner here, where everyone brought a meal for, like just a family-sized meal. They bring all their own cutlery, all their own gear, so that, we just host it. We don't necessarily have to do any prep or cleanup. We all contribute. We all share, we all talk, we all, just spend time together. And it was just such a beautiful thing. There was no pressure, there was no have tos, there was no, I suppose, falseness. Sometimes you can get into, different groups and you feel like you've got to put your best self forward, your mask is on, and I'm like, right, I'm this person, or I've got to be professional, or I've got to be this. There was none of that BS. And it was just so nice to just have people flow in and flow out. And there was people here that we'd never met before. We just connected on social media. And I was like, holy crap, I'm opening my house up. And these people are coming to my home. But it was so good. It was amazing. And all the feedback was, thank you so much for doing that. It was just such a nice way to connect. And there was a space for everyone. It didn't matter whether you were, the biggest extrovert there and you bounced around and you wanted to talk to everyone and know everything, or whether you just sat in the corner and had a meal and talked to one or two people and just observed and took the energy on board. It didn't matter. There was a space for everyone there. And I come away from that feeling so energized. And normally social get-togethers like that, I'll come away from it that for 2 or 3 hours and go, oh, I need to go to bed, I'm tired. So that was, it was such an enlightening moment.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to the importance and the value of being your authentic self, regardless of the situation that you're in, and how well received that is, regardless of the situation that you're in. And if it's not well received, then it's probably an issue. The other person has got an issue about them not being brave enough to be their authentic self.
Yep, spot on.
Yeah, I think all of my whole life, the thing that has served me most is being openly and honestly myself, and not conforming. Don't conform to a social norm that I don't agree with. So if I'm trying to mold myself to this way of being that is not in my heart something that I agree with, and I think that's quite damaging to people, society, the world, then that can lead to some big psychological issues and emotional issues.
Sure can. I suppose I want to take a little bit of a different tack. So you've also got another business that we wanted to talk about. So Share, Create, Innovate. Can you talk to your business a little bit? Tell us a bit about what you do there.
Yeah, I'm an environmental consultant. So my trade, I guess, is project management, program management. And so whatever projects I do, essentially that is the fundamental skill that sort of drives my success in it. I've done a lot of stuff around waste consulting. At the moment, I am working with an organisation called Bowerbirds and AgriFutures, which is the agricultural peak body in Australia. So I get to work on really exciting things. I guess that's also that need to have one, I love diversity. So any one thing, I'm going to get bored. It doesn't matter how fabulous it is. Eventually, it's going to become work. So I really enjoy having diversity in my life. So having that off-farm income is really important to us, because the other day I looked at Rob and I said, "Oh, how much money do you reckon we've lost in on the cattle this year?" And he's like, I don't know. It's a really
I don't
expensive
want to
hobby.
look.
Yeah, I don't want to look. This is why we stopped the chickens. But is it just a really expensive hobby? And he's like, yeah. I'm okay with that. Like,
Yeah.
as long as we're not trying to turn a buck and, rely on it. And I've got freezers full of my own meat and I can feed people, Dennis and Billy and Fred, then, I'm good. So, Share Create Innovate's an environmental consultancy. I do a variety of different work. And it's my off-farm income. I've been self-employed for 10 years, do a lot of project work. A lot of it is about if there's a problem that I want to solve. I'm not very good at sitting back and complaining about a problem. I'm much happier and I guess mentally stable when I'm actively involved in being part of the solution and not just sort of blaming other people for the way that the world is. So a project that I'm quite proud of is before people even really understood why plastic bags were bad, I started a campaign of Plastic Bag Free Yamba. So working with boomerang bags, and then I developed a product that was a brown paper bag. I got all the businesses to sponsor it so that then they championed that change, which meant that they were really invested in making that change. And, we got rid of plastic bags in Yamba before it was cool to do so, which, is pretty awesome. And then that product, the little green bag, which is the brown paper bag that's got all the business advertising on it, I'm not going to do that again. There's no need. We've solved the problem as a community. It's great. I actually just received the Clarence Valley Sustainability Business Award.
I saw that. Congratulations. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not normally into awards, but it's kind of cute. I kind of like it, to be fair. And then the other organisations or people that received it were really excited about it. So it sort of made me like, really excited about it. And
Gives you the
I
warm and
also
fuzzies,
wanted. Yeah, it was nice how excited everybody else was. And I was like, oh, actually, this is kind of cool. It's not, awards are a bit lame in my book. But, there was, after getting it, I was really quite stoked about it. So that was nice. It was a nice recognition. And everybody that received it's just worked so hard in the community for so many years. So it was really nice to get that.
Yeah, those green bags are still there outside Coles at Yamba. Like, is that just self-perpetuating now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll go fill them up. I also do a day in disability. So we go and fill up those bags once a week. And, but as I said, like I used to do 4 editions a year of 20,000 bags per edition, which, I mean, they're all recycled paper and we use bio-ink, but it's still a product going into the market that nobody needs. So, like, it was a transition product always. Like, it was never going to be a solution. It's not a solution. Paper takes a huge amount of, and to recycle paper takes a huge amount of energy and resources. And so it's really nice. Like, these last editions lasted over a year. And I've still got, a ridiculous amount of bags that need to be distributed. Cool. And then also I pick up fabric that Spotlight was throwing in the bin and take it to the Clarence Correctional Centre, so the jail in Clarence Valley, and they make boomerang bags.
Hang on, Gina. Spotlight was throwing in the bin.
Oh, mate. Like,
let's go to landfill.
Yeah, like waste is crazy. Is crazy. It's cheaper to throw stuff out. To throw stuff out.
I really would expect. I know maybe this is my naivety. I really would have expected a corporation like Spotlight would have been across the need to be recycling, upcycling, donating, whatever, anything but putting fabric, perfectly good fabric, in landfill. But clearly they're not.
And it's a company that makes curtains for Spotlight. So, maybe in the Spotlight store they've got their remnants and offcuts, but, I'm talking, they've changed because over the time of collecting this, that, they've made the change because it's about ordering. So they might order the wrong fabric or there might be a very small manufacturing fault in the bin. And to throw it out costs a fortune as well. To transport it somewhere else for then it to be resold cost a fortune. So they were very grateful that, you know, I'd go and pick it up for free and do this project as part of their corporate responsibility sort of thing. It's good. It's good for everybody. But yeah, like the waste is appalling across every industry. Like it's yeah, people have got no idea.
And
no
so
idea.
when you took it to the correctional facility, they were making boomerang bags with it, or
yeah, so they still do. And then I give them to organisations like Girrigam and Grafton or Majala, who I also won the Clarence Valley Sustainability Award with, Landcare, like just organisations that can then either give them away or sell them as part of their fundraising. And
cool.
That is such a good outcome. That's such a good result for, you know, that bit of effort that, you know, one person, well, you know, or one group of people, yourself and, you know, your supporters who have been able to go in and do that.
Well, it's about 10 tonne a year. And that's now, that's with the reduced. That's reduced.
That's crazy. And that's just one shop.
That's one shop. That's not Spotlight. Let me be clear. That's not Spotlight.
That's not Spotlight. Yeah. That's their,
Oh, Spotlight would have more.
That's just a store.
No, Spotlight store. So an organisation that they contract their curtain making to.
Yeah.
So Spotlight makes custom curtains. The company that makes those custom curtains, that's just from them.
That's crazy.
The one.
So crazy. Yeah. You think about all the fashion brands out there and bed linen and, you know, it's just, it's crazy. Carpet, like...
The other crazy thing about it is like they've got to burn or bury. I mean, things have changed. They're definitely changing because textiles is one of the biggest, you know, the waste issues that we've got. It's also huge with growing cotton and the chemicals and blah, blah, blah. You know, the list goes on. Yeah, the whole thing is crazy. But like a lot of they don't want to give the clothes away or because it either devalues their brand. If you can get it for free, then why pay for it? Like it's this whole devaluing thing. So like I couldn't give that material to people that were making curtains to sell.
Yeah.
Because they should be buying it from Spotlight. So with a T-shirt brand, for example, things have changed. Like I'm not saying this is all, you know, there's a sustainability metric somewhere in most organisations, but they will burn or bury versus give away.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the wrong kind of people wearing their clothes.
Yeah. Well, my husband works in the waste industry too. And even little things that don't seem like simple stuff. So he said one day they had a truck come in and it was full of peanut butter jars. And they were like, you need to dispose of this and it needs to be buried. And same thing, like they don't want anybody accessing the peanut butter. And it was because a part, like in their rotational thing, was made of plastic and it snapped. So if that was actually made of metal and not plastic, they could have actually scanned the jars and figured out which ones were contaminated. But because they didn't realize there was a whole day's worth of peanut butter that was made, and they literally had to bury tons and tons of these peanut butter jars. Like, and it wasn't like, they can't wash the jars out and then recycle the jars because that's a cost thing to them. And so like tons of this peanut butter just got buried in landfill. And like a simple practice, like changing their parts from being plastic to metal so they can screen for these things. And you think, how often would a part break in a machine? Like how often are we burying Vegemite and peanut butter and packets of flour, like whatever it is. And
even just from produce perspective, you know, like if it's the wrong shape, if it's the wrong size, if it's slightly off color on what the supermarkets want in their store to be able to display, I mean, it goes. Or now we've got, you know, like the odd bunch, or, you know, like the ones that look a bit funny, and they're the discounted ones, which they're actually not when you actually look at the prices, because they've made that a feel-good product now of, oh, look at me, I'm buying something that's, you know, not a standard piece of produce, but still there's like hundreds and hundreds of tons that are going to waste, you know, because it's just not
and
quite
it's
right.
Still, like the only reason that they're making these decisions is from a cost perspective. as well. Like, it's not like companies are out there being like, we want to be more environmental. They go, it's all about the cost. So, like, if they'd thought about it in the early decision making part, which nobody ever thinks about it, right? Like, when you're planning something, it's not part of the decision making process to work out what that cradle to cradle sort of methodology is, where things are able to, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Whole system.
My one thing that I was thinking about when we were talking earlier on the podcast about food security is, like, going to IGA here, strawberries, which, you know, north of here are probably in season, like growing wise, they're still $9.50 a punnet.
What?
And I feel like, yeah, it's crazy. But I feel like that's almost, and people are we're gonna get cancelled for this, but like, I think it's a good thing, because the more the prices are high, the more people are gonna start questioning, like, A, can we afford this? And, you know, strawberries aren't hard to grow. Why aren't we just doing this at home? You know, and the price of apples, like, it's not hard to, within a community, find some apple trees, or, you know, create a co-op where, you know, you grow apples, I'll grow this, and we can, you know, we've just lost touch of that so much. And I feel like maybe we're getting to a point where it's going to be so expensive and people just can't afford it, that instead of going without, they go, well, hang on, how come I just don't do this myself? Or where can I
It's only
source
the
it?
privilege that will really be able to do. Like, if you're in that lower socioeconomic and you're working for minimum wage, like the ability, and you're renting your house, like growing food isn't always an option for people.
But things like community gardens and, you know, co-ops, and moving back to that style of food security rather than relying on the shops.
Yep. My friend's Scottish, and he is, because he's got that Scottish mentality, which is tight as fuck. Like, he won't go. His garden's abundant. You know, like, he's out at Palmer's Island, and it's just like he grows all of his own vegetables. I'm like, fuck, I don't even grow all of my own vegetables. You know, like I don't grow my own vegetables, not like that, because I don't have that mentality of, you know, I'll go see Bob down at the farmers markets, or you know, go wanting to support like a local farmer, or, you know, I don't have that cost mentality. So yeah, I mean, but he works from home.
So he's got the ability to be able to put the time. And I suppose that's the other thing too, is that, and I mean, we've always spoke to this, do what you can with what you have. Like, not everyone is going to be able to grow all of their food, but you can always grow something. You know, there's always something that you can be doing to assist yourself, but you need to be able to obviously have the knowledge to do that. And I mean, the internet age, you know, I have a love-hate relationship, I think, you know, with technology. I think most people do. But, you know, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube, you know, and growing is one of those things that you can absolutely learn. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of free resources out there. So I think it's that education for people of saying, hey, you know what? You know, yeah, you do come from a low socioeconomic, you know, environment. You are working your ass off 80 hours a week just to pay your rent and put the basics, you know, in your home and look after your family. Okay, so what, you know, for your 5 minutes spare a week, what can you do? What can you do to help yourself with growing your own food? How can we give you the support and the resources that you need to be able to do that? And once you start doing that, you're then teaching your family, you're teaching your neighbors, your friends, and then that becomes, you know, it grows and grows and grows and becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that point you made, though, of it being a privilege is interesting. Like, that's really made me, you know, think more, you know, and how then did, you know, our immigrant people that came before us, like my immigrant grandparents, you know, how did they afford things, and how did we live? And, you know, I remember stories of them telling me that when they first moved to Australia, after being in the migrant camps, living with another family because they couldn't afford you know, rent, and they would be living in a third family, so, you know, a well-off family's garage that had been converted, and they were sharing a converted garage with another couple. And then my grandmother and the other couple, they had children, so they were bringing their families up in a converted garage. But it was such a normal thing back then to do as well. And I wonder how much of it is us wanting for more and us expecting this standard of living that maybe isn't realistic. And like, again, that's me checking my privilege because I've got a roof over my head. You know, I totally understand that. And I totally understand there's a section of our community that don't even have that. But for those of us that do have and feel like we don't, maybe that's just rechecking our expectations of what life is and what looks like, and you know, commercialism and all these things I think play into it.
100%, yeah.
Because I think we can be content with a lot less. And after living in a caravan, like I definitely understand that, like possession wise. And I mean, we're living in a tiny home and, you know, we don't have a lot of stuff. We can't, by nature of how we live, have a lot of stuff. And, you know, our kids are totally happy. And, you know, we're happy because we have a roof over our head. And, you know, things are tight for us, like, you know, to buy groceries and to pay our mortgage on the land. Like, we don't even have a house here, you know, we're intending on building. But I just think it's really interesting, like our expectations. And, you know, we're very privileged to have this land. And, you know, my husband and I are like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have more? And we just keep having that conversation. Like, why aren't we content with what we have though? Like, why? Why is it that we constantly want for more? Yeah, it's crazy. And so we're definitely having these conversations lately about why are we wanting more and why isn't what we have enough? And like, let's really kind of try and change our mentality around this, because, you know, we have a full fridge and we still go to the grocery store. Like, why? Like, why are we doing these things? And
and what's the trade-off? Like, to be able to grow your own food. I mean, it's different if you rent, right? Because then you do all your garden and then you're off, and building the soil is a big part of it. But I did want to circle back to when we were talking about when you're sick, and the things that you can do even in that rental situation is grow medicinal herbs for, you know, for self-healing. Like, that's a huge, easy thing that is, you know, wildly important and beneficial for people to have going, because I mean, if you need to go to work and you get sick, like, that's a real problem. So, you know, keeping yourself healthy. And I think if we look at it like that, like, the cost of getting sick is so high that why not spend the time and the money and the heart and the resource on being well? And that's also about, you know, our mental health and our ability to be able to navigate like you are through, you know, different situations, and being able to check your privilege, being able to check into those different things, because not everybody's got those skills, you know, and they're not taught those self-love skills of looking within and what do we really need, what do we really want, like that deep inquiry into like what is wrong with society, and can we do something different. Like, it's brave to do something different. It might seem simple,
totally.
but.
And when you were running the farmers markets, how did you find that experience? Like, you were saying that, you know, even there was that shortage of produce. And do you find people want that more? Like, I know we have it weekly. You know, is there a way to supply these things more so that we have access to other options? You know, that side of the equation.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, there was so little food that I would find people that literally lived in the bush and be like, hey, you grow pumpkins, you want to come to the markets? Like, I really sort of push people in coming to the markets. There's one egg guy there that was really small scale, and he actually scaled up so that then he could be the egg supplier at the markets, and he's still there. Yeah, it's tricky. It's people get wiped out by floods. You know, we were talking about COVID before, but the flood and the fires was also a really big part of the inability to be able to grow, like the soil, the fact that, you know, it just gets so compacted and so flood impacted that it's hard to grow food. And then, of course, the emotional devastation that comes from losing everything, to then go back through that whole process. It's just, you know, there was a point where I'm like, I don't want to grow food for other people. I just want to make sure that we're safe. Like, I'm doing this really external thing all the time where I'm trying to do things for others and change society. And I'm like, whoa, like, if I just look after myself and get to the point where I can grow for myself, that abundance will sort of come from that. Obviously, we still do the cattle, but yeah, like looking after your own patch and the knock-on effect that that has versus sort of almost like this xylophone sort of farming style where something catastrophic happens and then you're back to square one and then starting again. And I guess it'd be different if you're on a bigger scale, but we weren't on a big scale. You know, we're a small farm. There's just my partner and I that run it. So.
And so you don't sell any of your produce or meat
I've got
or
a lot of
anything?
stuff in the ground. Not at the moment, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to grow for myself.
Yeah.
I got quite unwell last year and stopped doing everything, which has really led to that deep inquiry into I just need to look after myself first and then all the rest will flow. And the way that I can look after others is with the workshops so that then they're empowered to have sovereignty over their individual plot. And it's really cool. Like, I went to the markets on Wednesday and I just had all these people coming up to me that I didn't even really realize were at the workshop saying, oh my God, like, I can't wait to do this at home. So for me, that's just such a massive success is when people go home and they start to implement. You know, I've had lots of people come over to pick up cow poo and, you know, we always give with the biodynamics, we always make sure that we make something and then we give it to people when they leave, like whether we're doing tree paste or weed tea or, you know, whatever it is. And yeah, that real knock-on effect. And I've realised that that's how I can make the most impact. It's like teach a man to fish. That whole, you know, don't be dependent on me and me growing your food.
Yeah.
Learn to grow your own food. And I mean, I'm on that journey as well. Like, I've got, I don't know, literally thousands of plants in the ground, whether they're vegetables or fruit trees, herbs, and it's hard for me to find lunch in that garden still, and that's 2 years on. That being said, I haven't, you know, with the veggies, the fruit takes time because they're obviously fruit trees, but, you know, we went from a paddock 2 years ago and now we've got a little food forest there and all those fruit trees are coming into production now, which is great, but it's still early days. But over time, the amount of food that I've pumped out of that garden is massive. But I had trouble selling it, like to harvest it was just like, and then the expectation, people don't want to pay for it.
And when you're doing it on that small scale too, like, again, it's produce. It only has, you know, a very short, you know, shelf life window where you can actually sell this. So, you know, yeah, if people aren't buying or if you have a glut of something and you're now competing with everyone else, like it's a real balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And my mum and dad, they don't have it anymore, but we won't go into that story. But they had 150 mandarin trees, and so by the time they came into season here, up north or wherever else had mandarins had gone through their, you know, at the beginning of the season, we're getting them from far away, they're $9 a kilo. By the time mine come on, you're getting them for $2 a kilo, and people don't understand why they should buy your mandarins and not the chemical mandarins from far away. I'm like, well, food security for one, you know, like we want to support our local farmers, otherwise we're going to have no food in our region. Like, that's a huge part of supporting local. It's not just a feel good thing, it's a survival tactic that we all really need to understand, that if we don't have food security, you said I could swear, we're fucked. Like, we are absolutely fucked if we don't have food growing in our local region, and there is no way we could supply the Clarence Valley with, like, we'd starve. And then what happens? And I mean, we saw it with COVID, right? The unthinkable happened. What happens when the next unthinkable thing happens? And as we're in systemic collapse of all of our systems, these things that we never expected to happen will start happening because it's a house of cards. The whole show is a house of cards. And so, it's all about power and control, and what Henry Kissinger's still up there, and you control the nation, you control the oil, you control the food, you control the people. Like, it's a good tactic if you want to be in control, and we have fallen hook, line and sinker for it under the guise of commercial, of convenience and consumerism. Like, it's our right to have access to other people's food.
Well, I think that's a really good segue into talking about what courses you've got coming up, so people can come along to Chaffin Farm and learn, learn about biodynamics, learn about syntropics, learn about all sorts of different things. So what have you got coming up?
Yeah. And before you start, Gina, they're really affordable, Jo. They're only like $30 to go into a course. It's not like $100 and something. Like, they're really affordable courses for anybody that's around to book in and go do one. Like, very accessible.
I mean, that's part of our value system as well, is that we want it to be accessible. I do need to say that for a long time we were doing it and it would cost us money. It would cost our educators money. So that's not a sustainable model. This lot of workshops, I've gotten funding from Fire to Flourish, which has made it, again, affordable. But yeah, if we get more numbers, then we can keep that price low. I think that's the key. But then there's different types of workshops. So the biodynamic workshops is very practical. So you really need to limit the number of people, because otherwise it's just chaos. People are off talking, nobody's learning everything, there's chatting everywhere. And Brownie's new to, like Tony Brown, the educator, he's new to that. And to control a crowd is a skill. And he's not quite at the stage where it's a real skill. Like Tiago from Syntropic Solutions, he'll come down and the first thing he says is, don't talk. If you've got something to say, wait to the appropriate moment, because you're going to affect other people's learning. Like, he reins people in. If there's somebody talking, he will stop the show and be like, hey, can you stop? Which is just takes so much balls, and you really need to do it to make it a successful outcome. So the next one we've got coming up is actually a free tree planting day, and we've got Peter Turlin, who has done a lot of stuff for Land for Wildlife, Landcare, TAFE. He's done the Takabia Nature Reserve, and we're just planting trees. So we're capping that at 25 people, so that it's, again, if you have too many people, it affects the learning. You don't get the outcomes, and then you end up just managing people rather than actually doing a workshop. So that's on the 25th of August, and I just looked yesterday and we've actually got 14 people coming already.
Yay.
So that's good. But that's really good if you want to learn about biodiversity, what trees to plant, how to plant trees. I've just planted, everybody thinks I know how to plant a tree. We don't. It's easy, it's far easier to kill a tree than what you think it is. They take care like anything else. Yeah, that's right. If you learn the hard way often, and that's okay. And then we've got a biodynamic workshop coming up in October. I'm still fiddling around with the dates. I think it's going to be on the 12th of October, but I just need to double check that. But all of it's on our social media, our link tree. Social media is the big thing to follow. I'll eventually get a website, but we're not there yet. So it's Chaffin Creek Farm is the tag. And then we've got Syntropic Solutions, which is the Syntropic Agroforestry, coming up again on the 30th of November. So we've got, we'll have 100 people coming to that, but we had 70 people come to the last one, and it sold out almost 3 weeks. Oh, I don't know why. I'm not very good with time frames. Maybe 2 weeks before. Maybe 2 weeks before. Well, I capped it at 50, and then I was like, people that I really wanted to come. So I kept increasing the ticket numbers, which was okay because Tiago could handle it. So we'll do 100 next time, and we'll be much more pointed with the way that we do the practical side of it. So the morning will be theory, and then the afternoon we'll build a big syntropic grow, but we'll build it with vegetables rather than fruit trees, because then that makes it easier to actually do the learning. And then next year we'll have Stuart out, and then that's it for the funding. I think I've run out of funding, so I just keep going for funding and seeing if I can get any more to keep those costs low and affordable. But as I said, as we build the numbers, that also makes it more commercially viable as well. Like, it was only since the funding that I could actually pay people, which was incredible. Like, it felt so good to pay the people that should have been paid the whole time. We had a videographer out this time, so that beautiful video that you watched.
Yeah.
Oh, like, just such a difference. She does all the stills, which means that I can do all the reels. I'm not on my phone all day. I can be present for the day. And then we get an amazing result like that video out of it, which Syntropic Solutions can share. It's an educational video. I'm just really stoked with that, because that's not normally something that people would fund as a videographer, but that's been one of the most beneficial things that we've gotten out of the funding, so that's good.
Super cool. Yeah. Well, we're coming up to nearly an hour now of having a chat. And we normally end the podcast with asking you, Gina, if someone was starting out on this journey, what advice would you give them?
It's okay to fail. It's a great way to learn. There's no such thing as failure. It's always the road to success. It's important on so many levels. It's not just about growing food or food sovereignty or being safe or your community. It's a hands in the dirt. It's like art, it's a fundamental human thing that once you start to connect back into that, it will really start that journey. You don't have to go hard. You can just start with small things. And really enjoy it. I was really gung-ho with everything at the beginning, and it was quite overwhelming. So, I mean, just start small and build, and whatever works for you. It's all about your context, which is a big thing in syntropic agroforestry as well. Like, whatever you've got available to you, that's where you start. Don't try and be in somebody else's shoes. You just do what's right for you. And there's just the greatest joy. Look, I don't have kids, so I don't really know what this is like, and I'm sure I'm going to get into a lot of trouble from comparing a cabbage to a child, but there's something in growing your own food and that creation and nurturing something for then yourself. There's something quite beautiful and spiritual within that. And there's just nothing better than eating your own food.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, Gina. We really appreciate it. I know it took a few goes to line things up with sickness and availability and all sorts of things. So we'll make sure that we put all the links to your socials in the show notes, so that anyone that is interested in either getting in touch with you or having a look at what courses are coming up and are available,
that'd be great.
And who want to follow your journey as well. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been such an enlightening conversation. It certainly got me thinking on a few things as well around privilege and around availability of information and resources. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been a real privilege for you to ask me to be on here. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. Jump onto our Facebook group to keep the chat going and to look for any resources that we mentioned on today's show. Look in the show notes.
And if you liked the episode today, then subscribe. Please give us a review and share. And if you didn't, then that's okay. We'll sure you'll find the right podcast for you.
Bye.
Bye.